And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game called Abstract Academy. It's an interesting name. It's a 2 or 4 player, mostly 2 player game in which you're placing cards out to make patterns and get points by doing so. There's a lot of games like this. This one's done by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, and Sean Stankiewicz, who these guys have made some fantastic games that I've liked in the past. Will this one be one of those? Let's find out. The game is made up of canvas cards. Each player is going to start the game with 3 of these canvas cards. It's a blank canvas, but hey, there's painting on it of 3 different colors, yellow, red, and blue. And every card is split into 4 different quadrants. So this is 2 yellows, a red, and a blue. There's going to be 3 rounds in the game. And at the beginning of each round, you're going to turn over some of these scoring cards. So in the first round, you're going to do 1 of each color. So we have a yellow assignment, we have a blue assignment, and we have a red assignment. In the second round, you will instead be using 2 of these professor cards. And in the third round, you will do 1 professor card and 2 of the colors. So players can take turns building a grid of cards. The first person places their card anywhere they want. It's a 4x4 grid, but it's not defined until players place cards. So here the third card's placed there, like that. So when the fourth card's placed, maybe this one person puts one here, next person puts one there. But look, I made these 4. That is now the width. But it's the depth that matters more than the width. When the fourth card is placed, we have now established the scoring sections. These are my 2 scoring rows. These are my opponent's 2 scoring rows. And this is my home row and their home row. The home row matters because once a home row has been established, only you can play cards in it. But at the end, you're going to be scoring for your rows. So let's quickly finish up a grid here. Once the grid is finished, you're going to score each of the cards in the order that they're laid out. So this says the most yellow areas gets 3 points. So I have 1 yellow area, 2, 3, 4. My opponent has 1, 2, 3. So I have more yellow areas, so I win this card worth 3 points. The largest red area. So I look, I have an area of 3. And my opponent also has an area of 3, so it's a tie. When there's a tie, whoever has the teacher pet card wins the tie, but then that card goes to my opponent. And then here it's the most blue areas with 4 more quadrants. So I have 1 blue area, that's a 4 quadrant, and my opponent also has 1 area that's a 4 quadrant. No, they have 2 areas, so they'll win this card. The professor cards, when you're scoring for them, basically have like the longest color path or the most color areas with 4 more quadrants. Also, at the beginning of each round, players will draw 1 inspiration card, and if you can score one of these, so this is, I need a 3x2 shape of the same color. I need a T, which when I'm looking here, I did not use. So maybe I can keep that card and try to do it in round 2, but in round 2 I'll draw another card, and this is a square of the same color. I did neither of these. Of course, this was built randomly, and I would be building with these and the professor cards in mind, or the assignment cards. After 3 rounds, whoever has the most points that you have gotten from these cards is the winner of the game. I dislike the box for this the most because I don't like these boxes where you slide cards in. This should be retired. This is terrible. You have to cut the decks in half, slide them in. Ugh, I hate everything about this box. The cards themselves, though, are great. Not only are they good quality, but I really like this. These were obviously all hand painted separately. I mean, like, just look at the examples here from here to here. The different yellow paints. This was done by someone who paints. It's very obvious. It's really cool. I really like these cards. And like I said, they're good quality. Also, everything's pretty easy to understand from the cards. The rule book, pretty simple. So, great components, except this terrible box. Now, there are a lot of games out there that are just like this. Games where you're building a grid with cards or with tiles and trying to make shapes and things. So how does this one stand out in the mix of that? Well, it's small, but I also really like this theme. I really like the cards. I like this art style. That's neat. The other thing is kind of this changing grid. But that I mean, how does the grid maneuver? Because your scoring rows are the 2 rows versus you. closest to you, and the number of columns really matters. But I place that first card. Your card, then, you decide to place it in front of yourself, pushing the card I played towards me, or put it towards me, pushing that one again towards yourself. That's kind of interesting. It's on the most interesting decision in this game. You have a hand of 3 of these cards. You'll play one, draw one. So you have 3 choices to make, and the cards are all different combinations of red, yellow, blue, green. I'm sorry, just red, yellow, blue. There's not a whole lot more to it than that. You're trying to score for everything. Almost always you can't get them all. If I go for the most yellow areas and you go for the largest red area, I can try to do both, but it's a little tricky. Also, you can only play in your home row, which is fine, because I can see why they wouldn't do that, because that would just mess your row up as much as possible. But you can play there if there's nowhere else to play. And so it felt the slightest bit clunky in that regard. I think that the problem I have with this game is the folks who made this make a lot of games that are the flat-out games, the design group. They made a lot of games that I can just teach the people. I'm like, here's how this plays. Boom. Play point salad. Boom, we understand it. This one, it works. But when it's done, I was like, that was interesting. And I felt like I was finished with it. It felt like there wasn't any real big hook. Yes, the pushing of the rows and towards you or your opponent, that's an interesting decision. As you get a card, you're like, if I place this here, I now have 4 red spots. So you say, okay, well, you're trying to put too much into it. It's a really light game. Sure, it is a light game, but there's a little bit of work because we have these different piles and the cards, and it just, that balance isn't quite there. The game looks fantastic. The game plays pretty quickly, but when it was done, each time I played this, I'm like, you know, what decision did I make that I should have done differently? I don't really know. I don't even really remember the decisions that I made. I'm just kind of playing cards and forming the patterns, trying to match the pattern in my hand and have the most yellow or the biggest yellow or whatever on my side. And it was okay. The problem is there's a lot of this style game out there. Form patterns and score them. And an okay one, maybe the size of this would make me want to keep it in my collection. But other than that, I think I'll forget about this one pretty quickly, which is not necessarily a good sign. So that's Abstract Academy. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment? It's okay.